Our guests today are members of Writers for Literacy, a volunteer project at Wood Library. They're going to be talking about their book, Story Potluck, 16 easy-to-read stories with adult themes.
Hi, I'm Carmela Battaglia.
I'm Maisie Carson.
I'm Carol Cresswell.
I'm Karen Mount.
I'm Annette Rozak.
I'm Jean Trost.
I'm Jewel Link.
And I'm Steve Donner. We're Writers for Literacy. Here are 16 stories from our book Story Potluck, read by our friends Michelle Kayward and Kathy Morris.
Help yourself. Enjoy.
Hello, Writers for Literacy, and welcome to Wood Library and to Read Locally, our local authors series. Why did you join the Writers for Literacy project, and why do it? Carmela.
I was a tutor for the literacy volunteers of Ontario County, and I was discouraged because there weren't appropriate reading materials for the beginning reader, and I wanted to get involved in a group that would produce reading stories that would be appropriate for the beginning reader.
How about you, Jean Trost?
Well, I've always loved reading and always had a book with me, and I wanted to bring that pleasure to other people.
Carol Cresswell.
Well, I got my 70th birthday and decided that maybe it was time. I did what my homeroom teacher told me to do 100 years ago and start writing. She thought I was a pretty good writer, and it's nice to have somebody believe in you. So I opened the paper, and what do I see? But Writers for Literacy Challenged people are going to be getting together at the library. So I thought, I'll go over there and see what it's all about. I want to be a writer.
Great. Annette Rozak.
I have MS and sometimes go through periods, months at a time, when I can't see well enough to read. To not be able to read because you don't know how would be much worse.
Steve Donner.
In this day and age, I think that the ability to read is one of the most important skills someone can have, and any way that we can help to facilitate that is good. So that's why I joined.
How about you, Karen Mount?
I wanted to give something back to the library because it gives so much to me and others in the community. And on a personal level, I thought it was a very creative way to keep my mind busy and hopefully stave off Alzheimer's.
And what about you, Jewel Wing?
Well, I taught children with learning disabilities for many years, and I realized the severity of their reading problems. Then my husband became the president of literacy volunteers here in Ontario County. And I saw the need for those people who are English as second language and for basic learners to have some interesting adult themes.
Back when this writers group started out in November 2006, there were 19 writers. We had a big response. And you are the 8 writers left standing, or shall we say left writing. What made you stick with it? Steve.
I'm not a quitter.
Karen.
I'm not a quitter either, and the lure of having something published was really a prod for me.
How about you, Jewel?
Well, I think I kept mindful, and all of us kept mindful of what the end product could produce for these people, and I think that was a big incentive for all of us. Also, we encouraged one another all the time.
Jean?
Well, having a reason to write and having other people doing it with me is part of it.
Carol Cresswell.
I guess I'm an egotist. I wanted to be published. But also, I have grandchildren I love to read to, and the power is wonderful of the written word.
Annette.
I just liked the challenge. It got to be more fun as we went along and took more things into consideration.
Carmela.
I wanted to
write a story that one of my students could read and enjoy.
By the way, this is Carmela Battaglia. What would you consider the biggest challenge of the project? Carol Cresswell?
I think it was getting together, all of us at the same time on a specific evening on a certain date
For over 2 years.
for over 2 years.
Carmela?
I think, understanding appropriate grammar, appropriate words and terminology, and making sure that we use the best language we can that would be usable for the student to read.
Anyone else?
Definitely finding the best words available.
We also didn't know, we didn't have an organization in place. We really were starting from scratch. So there were so many technical nuts and bolts things that kept coming up that we had to solve. And we did.
Also, I am not a computer person, and so we had a lot of help from Steve, who knew all the technologies and could get us on the right track.
Okay, this is part 2 with Writers for Literacy. We're talking about the book, stories, and themselves as writers. And looking at the stories that are in Story Potluck, these are stories about people and animals that seem like they could have come from real life. Like they could be our neighbors or from a story in a newspaper. How did you come up with ideas and characters for your stories?
Well, one of my stories was about Hurricane Katrina, and I had a brother who lived in New Orleans, and I wondered what would happen with his children as they came back and saw all the decisions that would have to be made, etc., about the flooded houses.
And Jean, you have one of the animal characters.
Right, that was a real story, my real dog. I took her on the plane to California and all the troubles we had. And I thought it would be more interesting to have it from her point of view.
Steve?
I enjoy stories with a really good twist ending, so that was sort of the motivation of the way that I wrote, was to write a story where you thought one thing was going to happen and the complete opposite did.
And did you ever run into some of those unsavory characters?
One or two, maybe.
How about you, Kara?
My stories all came from, or some variety of a personal experience. And I found that when I got too far beyond my own experience, my stories weren't as good.
Interesting. Annette?
We were told that most non-readers are men, and so I wrote 2 stories for men, one about a hunter and one about a fellow who makes some very unfortunate decisions.
Carol Cresswell.
Well, my story on Tina, I know a lot of children that are involved with divorces of their parents. Some handle it well, some don't handle it as well. And I just kind of developed it from there. The teacher's name is actually the teacher of my kindergarten class, the same name. The other story that dealt with a cruise, I've never been on a cruise, but I played a lot of poker, and I wanted to play poker, and I played cutthroat poker. The more I thought about cutthroat, the more I thought about vampires. Okay, they're in there.
Carmela.
My characters are fictional, but I enjoyed mysteries, and so I wanted to write a short story that had a mystery as the theme.
And Steve, you are the illustrator. How would you describe your illustration style, and how do you go about transforming a character from a printed page to a visual representation?
Well, my style is basically cartoonish with a little bit of subtle humor here and there, and I would say that basically the process I go about drawing is reading what's on the page, and since these ladies have such vivid descriptions in their stories, it was a piece of cake.
If you could tell people one thing about the book Story Potluck, what would you tell them? Anyone?
I would say enjoy it.
Something for everyone.
I would say I hope they can tell how much love went into it.
I
Right.
guess I'd have to say, even though this is a simplified style, I think everyone would enjoy these stories because we tried to develop them, some from real life and some that we made up. But they all have an interesting ending and they get you thinking, and I think that's what reading is all about.
Well, thank you, Writers for Literacy, for visiting Wood Library today and telling us about your new book, Story Potluck.